Good morning. I hope, do you hear me just to know? Yeah, is it okay?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for this invitation. I'm really sorry that I cannot be with you in Skopje. I already confirmed to come down, but unfortunately I have in 15 minutes the beginning of a very unpleasant event we have at the faculty. We have a funeral session from one of my colleagues here from the same part of the house who was working with me in Ljubljana and throughout the region quite a lot. And that's the reason why I'm not with you. So sorry for this. I was still asked to say a few words this way on the issue of what you have as a topic today. So it's basically the issue on data. And of course, what I can do is to put this issue of data a little bit into the context of the EU accession, but also in the context of being an EU member. Of course, my background and also my career always was on the economic side, so I will not be able to speak much on this segment which you have on the anti-corruption. So I will really stick to what I know and what is the area of my work is the economics. Look, I was also part of our team for accession to the EU, so back more than 20 years, and I continue to work with the Slovenian government on more or less all the financial issues related to Slovenia being a member of the EU. We cooperate a lot on the issues of the EU budget, of the fiscal issues, and these are all the issues where reliable data are extremely important. So I think the topic of today, which you have, is really one of very important, let's say, elements, infrastructure for the country, not just for the context of the EU accession, but generally of the development of a country. So I did listen a little bit the governor before and acting director of the statistical office. So of course, Macedonia, North Macedonia has here a lot of, I would say, very relevant experience. So I do not have any intention to go into this because I don't know enough about your country. But I can say a few words about the EU accession data issues, and on the other side, certain issues which are going on in the EU in this respect today. I remember when we started our accession negotiations, let's be frank, the whole accession criteria, economic criteria for accession to the EU have remained unchanged from those times till today. So there are basically two economic criteria, Kopenhagen criteria, that the country has to be a market economy, and the second thing is that the country should be competitive. What is interesting is that in our times, when we were joining, so that's, I was saying, that's the first period of the EU accession for these, let's say, Central and Eastern European countries, I would say that the economic segment was relatively less important, Of course, what was important was to become, to transpose the acquis. But on the other side, implementation of the acquis was at that time less under focus than this is a situation today. So one issue was that, let's say, the big enlargement in 2004 was basically done by and large without really a serious analysis of the economic issues in these segments. Of course, then we had the problems of the financial crisis, which was already mentioned today, 2009-08, and it became clear that if we will not really achieve significant economic growth, and I'm talking about not just the candidate countries, but the member states, then of course we have to to change the economic governance of the EU. And this economic governance has put a lot of focus on growth. And of course, if you put a focus on growth, then you need to focus on all those things which are important to stimulate economic growth. And here we come, of course, to the issue of competitiveness. If you remember 2013, 14, 15, this new enlargement strategy, which was developed at that time, did already put more effort on the economic side. Right? But still, even this was not really significant change in the overall approach, which has happened only with a new methodology, which Macedonia is part of its implementation now, the new methodology for the EU accession negotiations 2020, the changing of the negotiations to clusters. And now we have these famous 6 clusters, of which, of course, by far the most important is fundamentals clusters. And I would say the fundamentals clusters is basically the clusters which provides an infrastructure which is necessary for a country to join the EU, and basically also the infrastructure for a country to operate, let's say, normally. What is interesting is that within these fundamentals, one of the 8 areas is statistics, which clearly shows that statistics is de facto, a good statistics is infrastructure for normal economic and social development of a country. Why reliable, why good statistics is so important? I think the predecessors have explained much more, I would say, thoroughly and convincingly than I can do here. But I would still basically say there are few things why good statistics is necessary. It is necessary for providing a basis for a qualitative analysis. Without a good statistics, you cannot have a reliable insight into the problems which you are facing. Good statistics also provides a kind of a framework for trust and confidence. There was a discussion already by the governor about this problem with misinformations and so on. So without good statistics, I think it's very difficult or practically impossible to do an appropriate decision-making. With a good statistics, you can contribute significantly to cost savings, which is, I think, from public finance point of view, very important. Good statistics is a prerequisite if you want to merge sources of statistical data from different sources into, let's say, enhanced data aggregates. If you have the inputs into these aggregates, which are not qualitative, then which are not of a good quality, then of course the whole this integration of data will be compromised. Last but not least, of course, data statistics is a background for a good regulation. So these are all the issues why also at the EU level statistics has a very special position through the Eurostat, through the position of the Eurostat, and in the pre-accession time, of course, one of the areas where countries have to adjust to come closer is to not just establish, but to have these working relations with the Eurostat. Let me put this now in a little bit more meat for this situation. And I will first Slovenia as a member state. You will remember that after the COVID crisis, we had in Europe, in addition to the multi-annual financial framework, which is a kind of a regular budget for the EU, we established an entirely new financial instrument, which is called New Generation EU. But to simplify, it is basically an instrument which is an additional budget. But this budget is composed of the grant side and of the loans. But what is important, and this is, I think, is becoming increasingly important, the money from this side, which is allocated for investments, and for implementation of reforms is conditional. So Slovenia has now access to significant amounts of funds from this pot, but the prerequisite for this is that we implement reforms. But then when we come to the implementation of reforms, you have to articulate reforms, and you have to articulate reforms on the medium-term periods. When you articulate this, you have then to articulate also how you will measure the implementation of the reform. So the whole this issue of indicators, of impact assessment, has become increasingly important for the member states. Just to have a sense, the money from this source is being allocated in 10 tranches. And of course, if the country is not able to meet the criteria which were agreed with the European Commission, benchmarks, and these kind of things on time, then of course the money which is available for that country is not coming to the country. What you are doing in the candidate countries now these days, or let's say the recent months, you are doing something similar in the form of the so-called reform agenda. The logic of reform agenda is precisely the same. Investments which are conditioned by reforms. And if you want to show the progress of reforms, you need good indicators. For good indicators, you need good data. Sometimes the data are not available, so we have to construct data. So data is or are extremely important. And just the last word here, the last maybe minute or two, is the issue where we are today at the EU level. Yesterday, those one who follow these things a little bit more carefully, Draghi, so the former president of the European Central Bank, he was asked by the European Commission to present what he thinks should be done in Europe, in the European Union, to strengthen its competitiveness. His report came out yesterday. And again, a lot of things in that report are very clearly relied on the good statistical data. It is clear that Europe is lagging behind, particularly the US, in terms of competitiveness. We are strongly dependent on a number of strategic materials, and these are all the issues for where the statistical data are not yet either fully available or not at the quality which would be necessary for good decision making. So to summarize, good statistics is I would say, a precondition for normal, good economic governance of a country, and of course of the European Union, into which North Macedonia is heading to. So thank you very much for this, for your attention. I know it was a little bit short, maybe unorganized, but I hope it will contribute to your work. Thank you very much.